Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, and today I've got some more CD purchases to show you, and most of these came from charity shops and cost £1 or less. And first up we've got John Fogerty and the Blue Ridge Rangers Rides Again, which came out in 2009. This was 20 pence from a charity shop. Don't come here if you're looking for examples of his short and sweet and beguiling songwriting, as this is an album of rock and roll and country cover versions, and he's joined by some stars on a few of the tracks. So for example, you get Bruce Springsteen duetting on Phil Everly's Will I Be Loved, and Don Henley and Timothy B. Schmit, and can be heard on Rick Nelson's Garden Party. Amongst the other covers are Paradise by the late John Prine and Never Ending Song of Love by Delaney and Bonnie. It's quite a nice album actually. And next up we've got an album on my favourite reissue label in the world, Bear Family, and it's That Classic Twang by Duane Eddy. Bear Family acquired the rights to his Jamie recordings and went back to the original tapes and really worked on the sound, and you can really hear the difference on this CD. It sounds fantastic. So tracks like Rebel Rouser, Cannonball, Peter Gunn have never sounded better. Because it's on Bear Family, you also get a very nice booklet as well, and I'll just show you a couple of sample pages. And yeah, so it's really good, up to the standard that you expect from Bear Family. Next up we've got a various artist compilation, Dust Bowl Blues Essential American Folk, which came out on a budget label called Metro Select. This was 50 pence from a charity shop, and you get 3 or 4 tracks each from 16 influential American folk musicians of the 20th century. There's very basic liner notes, but then again it is a budget release, so I'll let them off. And amongst my favourite artists who are included on here are Woody Guthrie, Leadbelly, Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Dave Van Ronk. So it's actually quite a good introduction to American folk music. Next up we've got Anthology by The Temptations, and I got this one actually from a second-hand record shop, and I paid £2 for this, but I thought it was worth it because it's got a very nice booklet. I don't know how well these show up on screen, but anyway, it's just a sample of the detail you get in the booklet. And this covers the 20-year period from 1964 until 1984, and it's full of gems, all the ones you'd expect to find from the Motown recordings, and more than I'd normally pay for a second-hand CD, but certainly worth £2. And next up, this one was a bit of a speculative buy, the Wombats, This Modern Glitch, which came out in 2011, and it was just 50 pence in a charity shop. And they're a band that's sort of passed me by until now, and they're a trio led by songwriter Matthew Edward Murphy, and I think he writes really interesting lyrics and great sort of earworm choruses. What lets it down for me is the slick 21st century major label production, which really tries its best to annihilate these pop songs, which are in the tradition of lots of 80s acts. So The Cure, Depeche Mode, New Order, maybe early 80s, Elvis Costello when he was really at his poppiest. But I can recommend a couple of tracks for you to check out and decide for yourself whether it's worth acquiring it if you see it. Check out Anti-D and Techno Fan if you've not heard those before. I thought they were quite good, even with the horrible production. Next we've got on a German reissue label called Repertoire. I've bought a few CDs on this label before, and normally they're very good, but this one really does feel like a budget release. There's hardly any information at all, and normally you get a very good booklet, and this was £1 from my local charity shop. And even though it's not got any liner notes, it does have some really good material. So 11 of the 20 tracks were top 10 hits in the United States. So it's if you haven't got anything by Dion and the Belmonts, it's a reasonable introduction. But I'm sure there must be better compilations out there where you really get some good, decent liner notes to put all the songs into context. Right, next up we have got a name that was totally new to me, but it just looked very interesting, and it was only 50 pence. And Anne Sexton, Anthology on the Soul Brother label, and she was a soul singer in the 1970s, and this compiles her 2 albums, Loving You, Loving Me and The Beginning. The latter was recorded for the Monument label in 1977. She's got a real strong southern soul voice that was nurtured in the Baptist churches of South Carolina, and the slower tracks from The Beginning I think are just sheer class, and I'm really pleased that I got it. Right, and next, this is on the reissue label from Australia called Raven. I've had a few really interesting CD compilations from them, including the Yardbirds and one or two others that I can't recall now. It's Scott McKenzie, and it's called Stained Glass Reflections 1960-1970, and this was 75 pence at a car boot sale. It's a good compilation of his classic material, including the Ode label album that he recorded, Stained Glass Morning, which is here in its entirety, and that came out in 1970, and that was really a revelation. That album includes some support by Ry Cooder on electric and acoustic bottleneck guitar. Rusty Young from Poco plays pedal steel guitar on a couple of tracks as well. And Scott McKenzie really dominates the Stained Glass Morning album with his strong vocals, and he also shows off his songwriting skills as he writes all of the songs on that album. It's a very early, maybe an early country rock sound, and still folk sounding as well. So it's of real interest, I think, to people that like Michael Nesmith, Poker, and obviously it also covers his hits from the mid-60s as well. So you get the massive hit San Francisco, Be Sure to Wear Flowers in Your Hair, and its follow-up Like an Old-Time Movie. And he also gets to interpret sort of de rigueur artists such as Tim Hardin and Donovan. But yeah, it's really worth getting for that 1970 album. Right, next up we've got on Charly, Jerry Butler, The Ice Man, and this was £1 from a charity shop, and I think Jerry Butler's got one of the very best baritone voices in the history of pop. He was an original member of the Impressions alongside Curtis Mayfield, of course, and the CD starts off with 3 of the 4 songs he recorded with them. Solo career soon beckoned though, and with the exception of 3 tracks recorded with Curtis Mayfield, including a US top 10 pop hit which was called He Will Break Your Heart, and 2 tracks he recorded with Betty Everett, including another US top 10 pop hit, Let It Be Me. The rest are just wonderful solo performances. I particularly love his interpretation of Moon River, and the absolute peak for me is the original and best version of Make It Easy on Yourself, which was written for him by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. As much as I love the version by the Walker Brothers, the impeccable production on the original version by Jerry Butler is just amazing, and his voice is just perfect. Right, and next up we've got Lee Dorsey and the EP Collection Plus, and this came out on the Sequel label, and this was 75 pence from a car boot sale. I'm always on the lookout for Sequel CDs. He was, of course, a New Orleans R&B legend, and the CD focuses on his 1960s peak, and several of the songs here were written by Alan Toussaint and co-produced by Alan Toussaint and his business partner Marshall Sehorn, and they really hit the sweet spot for me. Next, another artist that I really like, Billy Swan, and I was really pleased to find this for 50p in a charity shop. The Best of Billy Swan. He's remembered here in the UK for his big hit I Can Help, and this compilation covers the period from 1974 when I Can Help came out up to 1982, and it reveals some wonderful deep cuts that I wasn't aware of before. There's a pleasing mix of country and 50s rock and roll with sparse production, and the songs have really aged well because of that sparse production, and I can recommend his originals if you've not heard them. You Just Woman, Handled My Mind, and Everything's the Same, Ain't Nothing Changed, neither of which I'd heard before, and yes, I played this several times. Fantastic CD. Next up we've got King Solomon by Solomon Burke, and this was another of the £2 purchases from a second-hand record shop, and I bought this one mainly because it was put out by a Sequel, and it covers the period 1965 to 1967. It's got rather poor packaging and some really diabolical liner notes, which are just a total waste of time, and the CD's built around the King Solomon LP that came out on Atlantic in late '67, and it adds just 4 bonus cuts taken from singles. A far better album by Solomon Burke, which I can recommend if you've not heard it before, is Don't Give Up on Me, which came out in 2002, and which I think won a Grammy. And I can remember seeing on Later with Jules Holland performing tracks from that album, and he was just an incredible presence and an incredible voice. Right, moving on, and we've got Steve Earle and the Dukes, and make sure I'm holding up the right one. Yeah, this is the album Guy. I've also got a second album by him to show you, and this one was £1 from my local charity shop, and this was actually on my wants list, and I never got around to getting it, buying it new. It only came out in 2019, and here it is for £1 in as new condition, just 2 years later. And it's Steve Earle's tribute to his friend and brilliant country singer-songwriter Guy Clark, an artist I've mentioned a few times in past videos. And Steve Earle used to play bass in Guy Clark's band for a few years, and he learnt a lot about songwriting just from working around in close proximity to Guy. It's a beautiful, heartfelt tribute, recorded almost live in the studio. I think they took about 6 days to put the album together, and it includes some of my favourite Guy Clark songs, LA Freeway, Texas 1947, Desperados, Waiting for a Train. There's just so many. The Old Time Feeling, all off the first album, Old Number One. I can't really say that the originals are bettered by Steve Earle's interpretation, but it's just lovely to hear him and his band performing this quite moving tribute to his friend. And the other Steve Earle album I picked up at the same time is called, it's really hard to read on these covers, it's called Terraplane, and this one came out in 2014. I've not had a chance to play this one yet, but I did notice that Will Rigby from the DBs is the drummer on this album, so that was a nice surprise. The DBs are a fantastic power pop band. And next up, something really fascinating, and this was put out by Rounder, and it's called Southern Journey Volume 12, Georgia Sea Islands. I got this incredibly for just 50p from a charity shop, and it's part of the Alan Lomax field recordings that he made, and it's a collection of biblical songs and spirituals performed by the Georgia Sea Island singers in the African style of their forefathers. It comes with an incredibly immaculate booklet. It's really puts all of the songs into context, and I'll just show you. It's mainly writing, but I'll just show you some of the content. So you get the lyrics to all the songs, information about the songs, and yeah, it's really a nice package to have. Unfortunately now, because I've got volume 12, I want to try and find some of the other volumes, but probably never see any of them again. But not to worry. You can't help but be moved by the spine-tingling music on this album. And finally, we've got what is possibly the best album of the ones that I've shown today. I've just been absolutely blown away listening to this one a couple of times yesterday. It's Sekou Keita, and it's 22 strings, and it was 50 pence from a car boot sale. It was actually brand new sealed when I bought it. Sekou Keita, he's from Senegal. And these are solo kora recordings. Plus he also includes his vocals on 3 of the tracks. The kora is an African stringed instrument. It's a bit of a cross between a harp and the lute. It's an absolutely beautiful package, and it comes in a hardback booklet. So again, I'm not sure how well this picks up on screen, but just to give you some idea. And yeah, his playing is just extraordinary. At times it sounds like there's 3 musicians playing at once. So he's playing a bass sound, his strumming and soloing all at the same time. And his vocals, which he only uses on 3 tracks, are beautiful as well. And if you want to check out one track, I would say If Only I Knew. I should say that nearly all of the songs are written by him as well, and this is one which has got vocals on it, and it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful song. Okay, and that's it for today. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and maybe liking and putting a comment below as well, because I always enjoy reading all the comments and replying to what you say. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.